from Davenport.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is for the Minister of Government and Consumer Services. I hear time and again from constituents in Davenport about commission-dependent salespeople aggressively pressuring residents into signing contracts for appliances such as air conditioning units, water heaters and furnaces. The sales pitch often uses unclear contracts or misrepresentations by salespeople to convince residents to enter into contracts with exorbitant fees. This aggressive door-to-door marketing tactic has been a long-standing consumer protection issue, as it is often the most vulnerable consumers who are targeted. Unfortunately, it is often the socially isolated and less well-informed consumers who are particularly susceptible to this type of marketing, and this is especially true in my riding of Davenport, which is home to a large number of seniors, a large number of immigrants who do not have English as their first language and cannot communicate, read or write well in English. Mr. Speaker, could the minister explain what measures our government has in place to protect our most vulnerable from being taken advantage of by these unfair marketing tactics?
Minister of Government and Consumer Services.
Thank you, Speaker. And I want to thank the member from Davenport for her important question and her strong work on behalf of her community. It's just incredible dedication. And as the Minister of Government and Consumer Services, I am committed to protecting consumers in their home from overly aggressive and deceptive business practices. Currently, our Consumer Protection Act gives consumers special rights when entering contracts in their home. Consumers have the right to cancel contracts for any reason within a cooling-off period, as well as specific requirements for contracts to provide specific information. Otherwise, consumers can cancel them within a year of signing. However, we know, Speaker, that there is more to be done to protect consumers and our most vulnerable members of society from being misled or taken advantage of, and that's why we introduced Bill 59. Happy to talk more about that in the supplementary.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I want to thank the minister for updating the House on what protections and rights consumers have when faced with door-to-door salespeople. I know Maria, who came into my office just over the winter break, is going to be very pleased to hear about the proposed legislation that would, if passed, offer even greater protections for consumers and new rules for sellers. I am proud of our government for its long-standing history of putting consumers first. This government puts great efforts into developing new and effective ways of protecting vulnerable residents, and I am pleased to know that the proposed additional legislation would create greater protections for consumers. Mr. Speaker, through you to the minister, could you provide more information about how this proposed legislation aims to strengthen consumer protection?
Thank you, Minister.
Thank you, and again, thank you to the member, but I also want to give a shout-out to the MPP from Etobicoke Lakeshore, because he did fantastic work on this in terms of door-to-door sales and has helped make this bill very strong. And the Putting Consumer First Act, Speaker, if passed, would amend our Consumer Protection Act. Any contracts in violation of the Act would be considered void, and any goods and services provided under these void contracts would be considered unsolicited, allowing the consumer to keep them without obligation. The legislation would also create consistent cooling-off periods, as well as develop new rules about how these changes would be enforced. It's important to protect consumers without penalizing organizations that do comply with Consumer Protection Act, which is why we'll continue to monitor consumer complaints to consider other potential sectors affected by our legislation. Again, I want to thank everyone who's worked tirelessly on this bill.
Thank you. Any questions?